Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar that's going to help you walk through data certification. This video is intended for lead agencies, but we also may have some program leaders and site directors that may find this useful. Again, this webinar is intended mainly for lead agencies. So I want to start with giving you a brief agenda of what we're going to walk through during this webinar. The goal here is to help everybody be on the same page for whenever we start the data certification process. It's going to begin July 15th and run for 1 month through to August 15th. I want to start by giving a brief overview of performance profiles and then lead right into data certification, give you guys some updates on the 2019 process, a timeline and some roles and responsibilities that may clarify what people need to be doing, give some possible corrections that could happen during data certification. And then I want to close out by actually looking at the data review system that everyone will be using to do these certifications. So let's start with what we're all working toward building, which are these performance profiles. So as many of you guys know, back in 2012, the legislature and the BESI board passed Act 3, which implemented a statewide early childhood system with a unified rating system and helped coordinate services across all of our birth to 5 programs. The pillars of this are reflected below. The first being shared high standards for what children should learn and what excellent teaching actually looks like. Expectations for health, safety, and learning that are consistent with adequate funding levels for programs that serve children well. Teachers that are excellent at interacting with children and guiding learning. And lastly, families easily have a system that can help them enroll and choose the best option for their children. We're going to be kind of drilling down on the performance profile part of this, which really helps us get at that ability for families to be able to choose between different programs. So the purpose of these performance profiles, in essence, is to provide information about the quality of publicly funded sites to families, to help them make informed choices, and to help communities improve on what they have to offer for families in their area. In 2015, we launched this unified rating system. It works to measure core elements that are needed for positive child outcomes, provide a clear and focused path to improvement, and give families an easy way to compare choices that are in their community. In 2018, 2019, and beyond, as you probably know, there are certain incentives and consequences. Tax credits and certain bonuses have been revised to reward improvement. Programs that are failing to meet minimum standards for 2 years out of any 3-year period have the potential to lose licenses or funding. And programs that have overall scores below a 3.75 participate in our required improvement planning process, a program that we're really proud of and that we're seeing some really strong results out of. These performance profiles have 2 main components. The first being the class scores. This is what most people associate our accountability system with, but there's a really important second component as well, which is this information on classroom best practices. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. That's things like what curriculum are being used, how many children are being assessed in a classroom, and what kind of credentials do teachers have? To give you a little bit of context, this is what the performance profiles actually look like and what most people are going to be interacting with. This is available on the Louisiana School and Center Finder, where you can look up any number of different sites and see what their site's rating is and what their overall site score is. That's available on www.louisianaschools.com. But if you click a little bit further, you'll notice that there are also these informational metrics. That's what we're trying to build toward in data certification and make sure that the data that is reflected in these informational metrics is certified by the lead agencies that are in charge of making sure all this data is accurate. Things like the assessment, a child to teacher ratio, the curriculum quality by age, all these things are reflected. As well, there's information about the teachers themselves. So we give percentages on what's the highest degree that is earned by teachers at the site, and how many teachers at the site are certified by the state of Louisiana. This helps inform parents' decisions on where they're going to send their children and make everything more transparent for children, families, and the sites themselves. So let's talk about how we actually get to this data. So this is a shared process between the department, lead agencies, and the sites about which information we're publishing. All throughout the year, teachers and site level admins are putting a lot of information into our Teaching Strategies Gold system. It's being stored there, and routinely the state takes that information and it reflects that information back to lead agencies to make sure that everything looks correct. So we're managing those changes throughout the year. Any changes that need to happen, lead agencies then go back, they ensure that that data is accurate, and they probably work with sites to correct any data that may be in gold. That's going on throughout the entire year. But beginning in May and June, we start the preparation process for data certification. At this point, the department is going to have taken the data that is stored within TS Gold and uploaded it to the FTP using the February checkpoint. Lead agencies can then go into that FTP, look at that information, and begin figuring out where this information is correct and where it may need some corrections. Lead agencies are hopefully working with sites in their area to confirm so that sites have a chance to have some input in what's being reflected. The actual data certification process starts in mid-July and runs to mid-August. During this time, lead agencies will make all corrections and upload all of the necessary information into LDR, or the Louisiana Data Review System. We'll come back to that system and troubleshoot some potential areas that may have some challenges associated with them. The state will begin responding to each of these records once they're certified and getting them off everybody's plate if all the information looks okay. If there needs to be further discussion around a particular record, then this is the time in which lead agencies in the state can narrow down what needs to be corrected, what may be going wrong, and how best we can fix it. Once the formal process of data certification ends, the state will then finalize all these records, make sure everything is okay on the department's end, and lead agencies may be asked to provide a little bit of additional information or documentation if something wasn't submitted correctly or if we need to make a further change. What you're looking at now is a timeline that roughly reflects what I just discussed, but narrows it down a little bit more to the formal data certification process. It's important to note that beginning in 2019, we have moved the process to be earlier than in previous years. And although I've said it before, July 15th is now the formal beginning of data certification. It still runs for 1 month, and so it'll close on August 15th. Previously, data certification has opened on August 1st and run through the end of August. But we find that this can oftentimes be challenging for lead agencies, sites, and the department as we prepare for the upcoming school year. So going back to that preparation process, May 31st is whenever lead agencies actually have access to site-level data certification files. These files are copies of what will eventually be certified in the Louisiana Data Review System. This is not the time in which you'll actually be certifying this data. What this is a chance to go ahead and begin collecting error corrections on any of that information. So again, the files that were dropped in the FTP in anticipation of data certification are strictly copies. Editing them will not change anything. And moreover, you are encouraged to take them, break them apart, copy over them, do whatever it is that lead agencies feel is necessary to make sure that all the data is accurate and correct. At that point, all of June and the first half of July, lead agencies are hopefully using these files to identify and collect any of those corrections that were just discussed. We really encourage lead agencies to be working directly in concert with sites during this phase so that sites are more informed on the process, so that lead agencies are not over encumbered by trying to collect and correct all of this information. And so that once we get to the performance profile stage, everyone feels like they were a part of the process. Now, as previously mentioned, the data certification process itself is 1 month, and it's going to begin July 15th and run through August 15th. During this time, lead agencies will be able to go into the LDR system and submit those corrections that they've collected. Any corrections that still need to be identified and collected would also need to be done during this time, bearing in mind that once the system closes on August 15th, that is the last chance the lead agencies will have to make updates to this information. We also want to say that after this process is over, once we have the information finalized, we're going to pull information one more time from the system and flag for lead agencies where the data that is currently in gold is different from the data that was certified, so that lead agencies can go in and actually correct that problem at its source. Otherwise, we run the risk of every year the same mistakes being replicated and this process continuing to be longer than it may need to be. We want to emphasize that data certification is a critical process. Even though it may not have direct impact on a site's class scores, it's still information that is used by families to select different locations, which can have a profound impact on people's businesses and on the care that a child receives. The information that is collected during this time is information like ages that are served by the site, the number of children that get assessed in each classroom using Teaching Strategies Gold, what kind of curriculum is being used, what's the highest degree that has been earned by the lead teacher for each classroom, and is there a lead teacher in each classroom that is Louisiana certified? There's an important note here to make. We use the October 1 child counts to verify how many children are in a classroom and how many are getting assessed using Gold. If there has been a change in the number of children that are publicly funded at a site from October 1 to February, whenever we pull this information, you should reach out to me, Gray Whitsett, at gray.whitsett@la.gov. And we'll need to make that correction to the October 1 child count so that the number of publicly funded children who are being assessed using Gold is accurately reflected. We don't want to punish anyone who is using TS Gold to assess children, but the October count may make it look like that they are not assessing as many children as they may actually be. So this is that information in a different format with a little bit of further context for what should be reflected in DataCert. So the obvious stuff are things like the site name, the site code, what network they're in, as well as the different age groups that get served. All of this information should be accurate as of October 1, 2018. So if a site may have the same site code, but they may have had a name change at some point throughout the previous year, it should still reflect the October 1 name, even if they've had a change. Any changes like that will show up beginning in the new year and will be reflected in the next year's data certification. There's an important caveat here. If there's a classroom that is opened in the spring before February 1, that information should reflect what was true of February 1, 2018. However, if a classroom opened after February 1, it should be left off of this process. It will be fully a part of the accountability system beginning in the fall and will be reflected in the following year's data certification. As well, at the classroom level, there is a little bit more granular information that needs to be filled out. So the teacher's name, this should reflect what was true as of October 1. The number of children assessed should reflect what was true as of February 28th, 2019. That is because that information is coming from the February gold checkpoint, just for context. The ratio and the age configuration of the classroom should be true, should reflect what was true as of October 1, 2018. The teacher degree, the teacher certification, and the teacher certification number should all come from October 1 as well. The only thing that should reflect something that's more recent is the name of the curriculum that is used. That can be true, that can reflect what was true as of May 31st, 2019. Now please note, just like on the previous slide, there are some asterisks out beside several of these categories. If there's been a classroom that was opened after October 1, but before February 1, that classroom should reflect what was true as of February 1, 2019. Another note, if there's been a change in the number of children that are assessed with gold between the February checkpoint and the May checkpoint, you may make updates to that. However, you will need to submit documentation that indicates the difference in the children that are assessed in gold. So if you want to reflect information that was true as of the May checkpoint, you can. You just need to make sure that you have the proper documentation to prove that. I'll show you in just a couple minutes where you will upload that information in the Louisiana Data Review System. Now, going back to those Excel files that were in the lead agency FTP, these are examples of site level and classroom level Excel files. These were screenshotted directly from there, so this is what they should look like. So if you were to go into your FTP, you can open up an Excel file for each site in your network. The first tab will show site level columns. Things like what network was it in, what's the site code, the site name, and then what age groups do they serve. The second tab in that same file will show rows of data for classroom level information. Teacher name, the number of children that are assessed in gold, ratios, age configuration, the name of the curriculum, what teacher degree has been achieved, is the teacher certified, and lastly, if so, what is that teacher certification number? I want to plug again here, changing this information in the FTP will not complete data certification for you. These are strictly Excel files that are meant to give you guys a heads up on what is going to be true in the system when you start data certification. They're there for your benefit. change them if you want. A lot of people will send out the Excel file to the site and have the site confirm it and highlight any cells that may need to be corrected. There are some different ways that networks do data certification. You are free to do whatever you want with it, but I just want to make clear that changing these files won't actually update anything. If you have any questions about these files, you should always feel free to ask as well. Lastly, let's take a quick look at the Louisiana Data Review System. So this is the same system for those of you that work as well with K through 12 sites. This is the same system that the K through 12 system uses. Each year, each lead agency will have a login ID and password that will be emailed to the lead agency contacts that we have. You'll use this login and password to log in at www.ladataReview.net. And it's in this system that you'll have a chance to download additional Excel files if you want updated ones, to make any changes to those rosters, to upload documentation for any changes, to submit error corrections to site info for us to review. And then lastly, to monitor any state response to each request that gets submitted. So there's a way that we can reply to you in there, and you need to be sure that you're checking those messages in there so that we're staying up to date with one another. As mentioned, users will receive an email from mmcsconsulting.com with login information. If you don't get an email, please just contact me, Gray Whitsitt, at la.gov. If you don't get that, please be sure that you're checking your spam and junk folders as well. Oftentimes those no reply emails can wind up in a folder that we don't want them to, and that'll save you a step of contacting me. I'll just say we have all of the information, and so there's never going to be a problem getting you logged in, but it'll save you a phone call or an email. So if everything goes according to plan, you'll have your login information, and now you're ready to get into the system itself. The home page looks something like this. Brief point here, make sure that you're on the version of this that says early childhood right here, right there next to, along the header next to the children that are displayed. There is a K through 12 one as well, and we've had people get confused and think that their password is not working. So you'll throw your username and password in right there. You'll click login. Then you'll be looking at a screen that looks like this. So pretend for a moment that you're all lead agencies from Acadia. So you would go up to the top left and you will mouse over that community network button up there. And that will give you a drop-down menu. You'll have some different things that you can click on, including a dashboard. There's downloadable roster files. But the first thing you should do is you should go to that assurance agreement button. The system won't let you go in and make corrections or certify any kind of records before you've done that. So be sure that you go ahead and do this. Once you click that, you'll get a screen that looks something like this. You'll need to put your name in, your title, the date, and then you'll click accept, which is like giving us your digital signature. This is basically just saying that everything that you guys do in here is on the level. There's no files that are going to be put in here that are untrue, and that everything's going to be reflected is accurate for the sites that you're responsible for. Once you've done that, you can go back to that home page, mouse back over Community Network, and get your drop-down menu again. And you'll have the option that you can mouse over the downloadable roster files button. Those are the same thing as the Excel files that we have put in your FTP. The benefit here is that if you do, say, half of the records in your network, and you need to put this down for a couple days and you want to come back, you can then generate updated roster files that will show the information that you have already changed. It's there if you want to use it. You don't necessarily have to. The main button that you want to be concerned with, though, is the button that's highlighted here, which just says Rosters. This will create an even smaller drop-down menu once you mouse over it that can take you to site-level rosters or classroom-level rosters. These are the records that you will be responsible for making sure that the information is correct and for submitting so that we know we can go ahead and publish these. So starting off, your site level rosters. To view any of these in more detail, you can always click the view button, or you can double click anywhere on that row of data. You can also scroll across using that cursor at the bottom to scroll over, and you can see all the information as it is currently displayed. You can also export this all to Excel if you like working in Excel more. I know I'm kind of beating it to death here, but for good reason. Exporting it to Excel will not make the changes that you need to make. That is strictly for you to use to your benefit. Assuming that all the information in here is correct, whether it's correct on the first try or after we've made some changes, you'll need to make sure that you click the Submit All Eligible Records for Review button. That will kick it to us, where we can then go in and say, great, they've done this, we're ready to move on. If you don't click that button, even if all the information is correct, it just sits in there and we can't go ahead and take it. So if you were to click on one of these site level rosters, this is what you'll see. So again, we're all pretending that we're Acadia and we're at this fake site called ABC Elementary School. You'll want to confirm that this site code is correct, that the name is correct, and the children that this site serves, the different age groups, that those are all correct. A brief note, we used to require IEP and IFSP information at the site level, but that is no longer required. And so you don't need to worry about that if that's something that you're used to doing. Once you've got all this correct, you'll need to make sure you click that Save button there at the bottom. That will actually save this information, and then it should reflect the proper information when you go back to your screen that looks like this, where you're seeing all your sites listed. A very similar screen is used to reflect classroom level rosters. So you've got some different functionalities here. You can always search by the site name, the teacher name, or even the status of the record. Some statuses might include like it's completed, or it has been edited but not saved, or it hasn't been touched yet. Once you get in there, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. This should look, again, very similar to the site level information. Each row in here reflects one classroom, and you'll access that classroom by clicking View or double clicking the row. You can scroll on the bottom to see the classroom level information just like you could with the site level. And once you're in a position where all of these have been certified, you'll want to be sure that you click that same button, that Submit All Eligible Records for Review button. One thing that is a little bit different about class level rosters is that you can actually add an additional row. So if for some reason TS Gold is missing a classroom, you can always go in here and you can click Add Record, and it will create a new row of data for you. You'll have to manually put in all the information, including the site code and site name, but that option is available. So if you were to click on one of these sites, or excuse me, classrooms, this is the screen that you would see. So the first thing that you'll need to verify is if you want to flag that classroom for removal. So the same way that you can add one, you can also just say, hey, this is incorrect entirely. This classroom is no longer open. It needs to be closed. The default for this is no, so you'll need to click yes if you want the classroom to be removed. You'll see here that there's a teacher ID, there's a teacher name, there's a teacher degree, there's their certification, yes or no, and their certification number. One thing to keep in mind here is the teacher ID as well as the class ID, which is there below it. You do not need to worry about these numbers. These numbers are generated by the system as a way to give each classroom and each teacher a unique ID, but they are not reflecting anything real. So you do not need to worry about certifying that information. That is strictly for us to use to help us sort data if we need to. A reminder that the certification number is required if you put that the teacher is certified, and you are welcome to use www.teachlouisiana.net to look up any unknown certification numbers. This is the database that we will eventually use to check all of the certification numbers that you guys put in. So that system is publicly available and you're more than welcome to use it. Be sure that if you have any changes to the box that says number of children assessed, that you have documentation that you can upload to prove that. The only exemption to this is if you're taking it from a number down to 0. You do not need to submit documentation if you're changing it to 0. You will submit that documentation up at the top right where it says description and support documents, right below where it says new record. So you'll click there and you'll see that there's a little place where you can upload documentation. I'll put a little caveat here as well. If any of this gets confusing or if there's any kind of concern about whether the information is saving or not, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at gray.whitsitt@la.gov or any of our staff. Just like with site level information, be sure that you click save whenever you're done so that your hard work is reflected. So to round us out, there's a couple common mistakes that get made. Sometimes whenever you're looking at your list of classrooms, you'll open the wrong record. It's very easy to do, especially for sites that have multiple classrooms where it's harder to identify which row of data you're looking at. Just be sure that you're checking yourself on that and not opening the wrong classroom record and putting the information in there that is incorrect. If you need to move a classroom record from one site to another, there's no way to do that. So you'll need to delete the record from the original site and then create a new one at the site where you meant to. Ultimately, you just can't transfer a classroom. Also be sure that all the information metrics aren't blank. So be sure that you fill them all out. So even if there's no information to put in there, you'll need to put none or no or unknown. And then lastly, I brought it up before, we'll say it again here, be sure that you're saving all those changes to a record before you submit it. If you go in there and edit information and don't click save and then you click submit it, it's going to actually reflect the wrong information. Final reminders here. Be sure the teacher certification number is correct. We will be validating those. Be sure that you have the necessary documentation to reflect any changes to the number of children assessed. And as a general rule, remember that what was true on October 1 is what should be reflected unless there's a specific case otherwise. You're welcome to go back and look at the different metrics that break that rule. But in general, October 1 is your North Star. So there's not really going to be an opportunity for us to have a back and forth here for questions and answers, but I would just say that if you have any questions, we're here to support you. That's why we have this system in the first place. So please, please, please always feel welcome to reach out to me, Gray Whitsitt, at gray.whitsitt@la.gov, or you're always welcome to email our whole team at earlychildhood@la.gov. One last thing, we know that there's a lot of different data systems that you guys juggle, and we know that there's a lot of different moving parts to all this. We really appreciate your hard work and diligence. And if there's anything we can do to support you additionally, please just let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great data certification.